We end exactly where we began, in the pursuit of justice for Helena Hutchins. And it's really important because this is not a case where Hannah Gutierrez made one mistake, and that one mistake was accidentally putting a live round into that gun. That's not what this case is about. This case is about constant, never-ending safety failures that resulted in the death of a human being and nearly killed another.
You are listening to the Roberta Glass True Crime Report, putting the true back in true crime. From New York City, Roberta Glass is now on the record.
Okay, how is everybody? Do we have a verdict, or is this just another question by the jury? One more time. I don't know. I thought I'd go in a little early, check it in, and see what's doing. I think we're waiting for everybody to begin. So we had closing arguments today in Hannah Gutierrez Reed's trial. And looks like we are waiting. Maybe the jury's coming back. Maybe it'd be fun to watch some of the verdict if it's really a verdict. And I would think this would be this looks like Charlie Adelson 2.0, doesn't it? And I apologize for my volume. It really was something next to Alec Baldwin's volume yesterday. But how are we feeling? How are we doing? Yeah, it's a verdict. We're all waiting for a verdict. Yeah, this seems like Alec Baldwin. Alec Baldwin. It's looking very bad for Alec Baldwin if she gets convicted very quickly. I'm not sure about the second charge, the tampering with evidence. I mean, I cannot believe we're going to convict someone on one woman's word where they can't even say how it's connected to the crime. But here comes in the Kardashian for the defense. I kind of came to appreciate her a little bit. Great closing argument. And I'll expand on, I wonder if anybody can guess what was left out of the state's closing argument that I thought was really interesting. And I think it made it very strong. I think this attorney, Kari Morrissey, knows how's my volume, everybody? Knows where her weaknesses are in her case. Very aware. I'm curious if she's been watching any of the coverage or watching any of the material that's listening to the feedback on this case, watching X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, watching the Law and Crime chat, watching the Court TV chat. And I was very interested in her closing. I thought it was about as good as a closing as I've seen. So we're just waiting for them to turn on the yep. Are we it almost looked like everything was frozen there for a second. We're just waiting, huh? Waiting. Let me see if I can get that a little bit better. Well, no, that's what big screen looks like. Okay. Maybe that's a little bit better for you guys. So I don't know. It was interesting. I thought the defense closing was awful, pretty bad. Although I was interested to see him making a lot of the points that were made right here from you guys on this channel, as far as right up to almost word for word from the comment from the last night or the night before about a nurse, medication. If they give the patient the wrong medication, if it's labeled wrongly. Pretty interesting. Should I get into your comments, or I guess we should wait, right? Does anyone have any comments or questions about today's closing? What a disappointment. Yeah, Charlie's verdict was, who said that? Debbie Gibby. Charlie's verdict was quicker, Ella, but this is a quick one. Certainly, and they had a lot more evidence to, well, maybe not. I thought it was a little bit more complicated case. People still coming in. Disaster yesterday in court, of course, with the gun witness by the defense, and going to talk a little bit about the way that the judge handled that. Seth Kenny, Angela's in the gallery. Is that true? So the gun expert basically pointed what I have heard was a prop gun, not able to be fired. But then I've also heard it's a replica, so I can't really get a straight answer. Shari, we're waiting for a verdict in Hannah Gutierrez Reed's case. So thanks for being here. I just started a little early because of this, about 2 minutes early. But Kari Morrissey, what a fantastic closing by Kari Morrissey. Stuck almost entirely. So here, I'll just talk about it as we wait. Stuck entirely to the video evidence and reference very little of the witness evidence. So you very often in a closing argument on either side will hear, you heard from this witness, you heard from that witness, said this. And she must know that almost all of her witnesses were lied in one way or another. I mean, so many lies, right? Whether they were big or small, from Sarah Zachary, the prop master, saying she didn't know why she threw away evidence. She couldn't tell you why she did it, or she did it in a panic. She was panicked. And anyone could have seen her. She did it in public. Terrible. Everybody knows why. Even if you regret why you did something, even if you regret that you did something in the past, you know why you did it. Everyone has a motivation for why they do things. That's the whole idea of acting, is based around it. So looks like we were maybe waiting from someone on team defense, sitting behind the defense. Are they going to turn on the sound? I hope I didn't have the sound turned off. Let me make sure I don't. Yeah. Okay. Looks like we're just waiting. They're going to keep the sound off till the very last minute. But wow. Not much argument in there, huh? I mean, I think it would be, if I had to guess, oh, they're waiting for Hannah. Is that a leather skirt? Is that what she wore? Really? Did she really wear that? Oh boy. Unfortunate fashion choice. So I would think that if she's convicted today, that she'll I'll be allowed to leave and won't be taken into custody. She must be so nervous, but this really reminds me of the Conrad Murray trial. Just so below the standard of safety. And in that case, it was so below the standard of care. I would think that would be her family, but who knows? There was a woman I identified I thought might be on Alec Baldwin's legal team. And a sharper eye than mine pointed out that they believe it is, or she believes that it's someone from the reporter sent me the picture, and I think that's right. It's hard to see. They're kind of small figures in the back, but I think has a great eye, and that she was absolutely correct. So Hannah Gutierrez Reed looks like she's about to cry, eyes welling up a little bit. I think she senses, very much like Charlie Adelson did, that this may not go well for her. I'd be very surprised if they're going to get her on the... Oh, here we go. We have sound. On the evidence tampering charge. Apparently, Thel Reed was in court yesterday with an entourage. He was also, in addition to being a world-famous armorer, the bodyguard for Evel Knievel. Just a little trivia as we wait.
All right, you may be seated. All right. Just a minute. All right, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, through the foreperson, have you reached a verdict?
Yes.
All right, let me see the verdict form.
She needs a hearing.
So we've had one false start on this channel. Jury had one question about question number 20 about the definition of it had something to do with liability, if I'm remembering correctly. It's not a good sign for Hannah Gutierrez.
All right, so let me repeat. I said, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, through the foreperson, have you reached a verdict?
Yes.
All right, and do you wish to read the verdicts?
Sure.
Okay, I would start with count one.
Oh.
Okay, you have both of them. Will the defendant please stand?
We find the defendant, Hannah Gutierrez, guilty of involuntary manslaughter as charged in count one. We find the defendant, Hannah Gutierrez, not guilty of tampering with evidence as charged in count two.
Yeah, that's
Thank
what I
you.
thought it would
Let me
be.
get those forms, retrieve those forms from you. I'm going to do what's called polling the jury. What I need to put on the record is that this is your individual verdict, okay? So I'm going to start with the gentleman in the back. Is this your verdict?
Yes.
Ma'am, is this your verdict? Sir, is this your verdict?
Yes.
Sir, is this your verdict?
Yes.
Sir, is this your verdict?
Yes, Your Honor.
Sir, is this your verdict?
Yes.
Sir, is this your verdict?
Yes.
Ma'am, is this your verdict?
Yes.
Ma'am, is this your verdict?
Yes.
Ma'am, is this your verdict? Ma'am, is this your verdict?
Yes.
Ma'am, is this your verdict? Okay, thank you. All right, so you've completed your service. Thank you so much for being here. It was a long trial. People may want to talk to you. This has been pretty much a lot of publicity, and you don't have to. Okay, so you can just simply say, I do not wish to talk, and move on. And if anybody bothers you, we really try to protect your privacy. If anybody bothers you, simply call my division, and and we'll figure out what to do. But you also may talk, okay? So it's entirely up to you, okay? All right, so you can escort them out. All right. Thank you.
Great. Are you guys interested
Rise.
beyond this? Because I'm about to turn it off. Yeah, she's taking it very stoically.
George, just a minute.
All right, I'm gonna get into my show if that's okay with everybody. Does anyone have if anyone has more interest in? Oh, actually, we should probably stick around to find out if they're going to sentence her right here or if they're going to make a sentencing date. Let's hang out to see if they're going to make a sentencing date here. I hope Beverly, Idaho gets Brian Kohberger. I am seeing more things for him about
All right, you may be seated.
him being not guilty. Oh, God. Where people are asking me if Idaho has the right guy.
All right, is there anything that the state's requesting based upon the verdict?
We would request that Ms. Gutierrez be taken into custody.
Mr. Bowles?
Your Honor, we would request under, pull up the rule, Your Honor.
Oh, he's got this. He knew it was going to be bad, too. He's got this right on his cell phone. Oh, you have to pull up the...
Your Honor,
No,
Rule
your evidence
5402, release pending sentencing. In this court's discretion, under the same conditions or other conditions as this court would deem necessary. Ms. Gutierrez has been on conditions. She has not violated those conditions. She has voluntarily appeared at all court proceedings. Your Honor, I would request this court to continue conditions or whatever conditions this court would have on release.
All right, thank you. I'm going to remand you, and the reason why I'm going to remand you is you are now convicted. And so, and this is a death. It's a criminal negligence, but it's still a death. And so, deputies, you're going to take her into custody, and we will set a sentencing date. What is the best, what do we want to look like on that? And we need an order of remand, do we? David?
That looks like your mother, right? That's got to be your
Counsel.
mother. Only a mother could react that way.
In terms of the sentencing date?
Yes.
At the court's convenience.
So they're
Will be
taking off her
available.
jewelry. 'cause she's
There
not
are
allowed
2
to
weeks
have
in
that.
May that I'm unavailable. Those are the last 2 weeks of May.
All right. Mr. Bowles?
Your Honor, as soon as this court has time, we will be available.
All right, so, do you have any conflict like that? She said May, do you have any conflict?
I don't know for sure, Your Honor, that I do have other trials, but I think mid-May.
Well, I can do it sooner.
Okay,
I just wondered if you had any conflicts along the way.
doesn't look like mid-May, Your Honor, I do. I don't think I have any conflicts.
I'm sorry, I'm not understanding. Do you have, okay, we're in March, do you have time before May?
We have time in April.
Okay,
Sure.
okay. All right, anything else before the court?
Nothing from the state, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, we're in recess.
So she's going to be taken in here. She's taken off her jewelry. She's taking it very stoically. I really have always said that she will do very well, I feel, in prison. And it may be, through this whole trial, the Rolling Stones, you can't always get what you want, but you get what you need. And I really think she may need this. Very spoiled, little immature. And I think that this will do her well. I mean, I'm not anyone to say what she needs, but that's just my opinion of that. I think it will be good for her. And she's taken it very well, or stoically, if you consider stoic well. She very bravely put on a brave face. But I will tell you that I've been very disappointed by the way the investigation was done. Really uncomfortable with it. Very uncomfortable with the witnesses in this trial. if there wasn't video evidence, and I think if this were just witnesses, I'd say this was a travesty. I cannot say this was a travesty of justice. At the end of Kari Morrissey's closing argument, I pretty much felt the way the jury felt, that this will only be extremely unfair if Alec Baldwin gets acquitted. And I hope that this is a message to movie sets everywhere that we can't have these kind of lax safety standards around guns. I hope we will remove guns altogether in this day of CGI. If we cannot have responsible actors, responsible people running the show. And, you know, I was thinking back, you know, I heard from a friend of mine, and she says, you know, you got to go back and correct what she said, because Dave Halls said that he handed Alec the gun. And I said, yeah, no, maybe. And so we, you know, we're talking about it. I watched it again. No, Alec, you know, this is the first time in this trial that we heard that Dave Halls, who pled guilty and got 6 months probation, and he was this after Hannah Gutierrez Reed, it was his job to check unsupervised probation. And people have been saying, oh, Hannah Gutierrez Reed should have just pled out. I don't think anyone was offering her a plea deal. But she may have saved her family a whole lot of money and time by going through this. But of course, you know, she would have had to plead to that extra charge of tampering with evidence, which I thought was a ridiculous charge. It almost seemed like an extra charge just for the jury to throw out if they wanted to throw out something. We do not, I mean, is this what we're going to in America? We're convicting someone on one person's word? Is that it? Yeah. So I was just really uncomfortable with the way the investigation was done, and the way Seth Kenney really became part of the investigation team. Thought that was extremely unprofessional, and it does not, I don't know. I didn't think it represented our country very well. That's what I'm going to I'll leave it at that. So let's take a look at the thing that was so effective, which is Kari Morrissey's clothes. Actually, before we get into it, let me get into your comments. They were pretty interesting. Very split. But boy, did they blow. You know, there's a concept like it does. So let's say, for argument's sake, that gun was just a totally like almost a toy gun and it couldn't fire. What was the judge doing reprimanding the expert witness in front of the jury? Was that, I believe, am I right about that? I just want to double check. Right? I mean, it really gave the impression to the jurors that the expert witness kind of biased against the expert witness, that he was out of control, throwing guns around. There was no need to not just move the jury out of earshot and then reprimand him. Why was that done in front of the jury? I thought that was, I was not pleased with that, but yeah, definitely. All the video is really what convicted her. So let's take a look at it. Let's get into it. Actually, let me get into your comments first, as promised. Here we go. GG4 says, Roberta, love the show. I think Hannah should be found not guilty. Sorry, but the DA just didn't get there for me. This is today, and she had plenty of opportunities since the defense didn't object to anything. That's true. He didn't. Alec Baldwin is guilty since he pointed the gun and fired. Also, Keith 2570 says the defense's best option at this point, other than hoping for an acquittal, is garnering sympathy from the jury for a lesser sentence. Well, I don't think a lesser charge was on the table as far as I knew. Hi, Roberta. Can you cover why no one else is charged here? Sorry, I think this is Alice M. 6192. Can you cover why no one else is charged here? Aside from Alec, did every other person take a plea deal and Hannah was the only one that held out? Like I said, I don't think she would offered a plea deal, nor was Alec Baldwin, if I had to guess. I wasn't privy to those communications. You'd have to ask Mr. Bowles or Ms. Morrissey. It seems like she should have been offered a plea to put the greatest responsibility on the film management, or at least spread around. It's pretty clear the set was a crap show, my words, and everyone knew, or my word, excuse me, and everyone knew Hannah was awful. So why didn't anyone literally above her say or do something? Well, we'll hear about Miss Pickles was trying to lighten her load and trying to get her to have an inventory system. But certainly for me, Dave Hall's testifying that he felt the set was safe was definitely not a good look for the whole production. And Kari Morrissey let that be known in her closing. Let's take a look at it.
May it please the court, counsel? I want to begin by thanking you all for your time. I know that this has been a long trial, and I also understand that as jurors you find yourselves maybe a little frustrated. There's a lot of sitting around and waiting, and we appreciate your time. We appreciate the sacrifice that you make when you leave your jobs and your families and your other responsibilities, and you come to court to participate in a very, very important part of our justice system. So on behalf of the state of New Mexico, we thank you very much for your time. And as you can see on your screens, we end exactly where we began, in the pursuit of justice for Helena Hutchins. I want to start by just generally outlining Hannah Gutierrez failed to maintain firearms safety, making a fatal accident willful and foreseeable. And please keep in mind that omissions can also be willful. So if we fail to do something that we should do, and that failure results in someone's death, then that too can be willful. So I would ask that you keep that in mind as we move through some of the evidence and testimony that you have heard. I know that you have heard a lot, and I do not intend to keep you too long.
Just a thought. Oh, sorry guys. Let me move my mic back. Do you guys think that Alec Baldwin, should he be convicted? Let's just say for argument's sake, thought experiment's sake, that he's convicted. Is that fair for Hannah Gutierrez Reed to get the same charge, to be found guilty of the same charge? Should he, and I know there were other producers, but he was really the go-to guy when people had problems with their accommodations, when they wanted things changed, they went to Alec Baldwin. We saw Alec Baldwin in the video barking orders. Would a stronger kind of charge? In fact, Hannah Gutierrez Reed was charged with more things than Alec Baldwin. Is that fair? I know life is not fair, but what would you have done? Just curious to hear your opinion.
But I do have to be thorough. I do want to hit some high points. So I do appreciate your patience. Here's what we saw. These videos, if you recall, that were taken by production outfitters, they were taken on October 13th of 2021. What these demonstrate to you is that Ms. Gutierrez.
So look at Kari Morrissey immediately going right to the file, right to the right to the video. And if that were the case, why did we hear from why did she just abbreviate her case a little bit? Why did we have to hear from all those witnesses? I mean, it was interesting, but come on. Makes me think she could have made her case in a lot shorter time.
Was unwilling to maintain proper firearm safety repeatedly. And it's really important because this is not a case where Hannah Gutierrez made one mistake, and that one mistake was accidentally putting a live round into that gun. That's not what this case is about. This case is about constant, never-ending safety failures that resulted in the death of a human being and nearly killed another. So let's talk about all of the safety failures that we saw, and the reason that these safety failures prior to October 21st are so critically important to the analysis is because they go to foreseeability. And foreseeability is a very important element in this case. So as we can see here, we have our stuntman with his double barrel shotgun. From watching those videos, what you
Karen, Alec Baldwin is charged with involuntary manslaughter, the same thing that Hannah Gutierrez Reed, if you're just tuning in, just got convicted of. The evidence, tampering with evidence, destroying evidence charge, not guilty, as I predicted. So I wasn't surprised by this verdict. Am I still uncomfortable with the investigation? Am I still uncomfortable with a lot of the witnesses? Yes. Does it make me scratch my head, raise an eyebrow to see a very young detective be led around by a potential witness, being called over 40 times, really inserting himself in the case? And listen to what she says about the pandemic and the pandemic rules, and we're going to go back. Some contradictory things in her closing argument, but a fantastic closing argument. One of the better ones that I've ever seen.
understood is that Ms. Gutierrez did appear to, in fact, be present, because at times we saw her and at times we heard her. So she wasn't off doing prop duties. She was right there, and she never intervened. Gun pointed at a child. Gun pointed at Joel Souza directly at his back. Gun pointed up in the air in the direction of the stunt coordinator. Gun pointed again, apparently in the direction of Mr. Souza, the person on the far right. Gun pointed directly at Mr. Souza again, the firearm in the left hand of the stuntman who is facing you. Firearm pointed directly at a minor child.
As opposed to a major child. As opposed to just a minor. What? Talk about redundant. Okay. Those kind of things are my pet peeve.
Firearm pointed directly at the camera. Ms. Gutierrez, holding that same firearm with the muzzle pointed at her own face.
my friend has compared her to Columbo, this prosecutor Morrissey. This is a great closing. No, nothing wrong with the closing, but every time she's up there, it just feels like she's in love with the camera. She's putting on a show. The manner in which she talks is very affected, or that's the way I perceive it. I don't know. I was surprised not what jury just nullified the jury on that alone, but but this one, as I predicted, if you go back to the beginning of the show, you can hear me predicting exactly the way it came out. So I don't think this is a big surprise.
This was unexpected. Ms. Gutierrez stood by and did nothing in between scenes when that stuntman, who had certainly been sent the message that he could do whatever he wanted with those guns, no one was going to intervene. The person tasked with intervening was not going to do it. That was clear. He hands the firearm to the child and allows the child to manipulate the gun before then, after a short period of time, perhaps thinking better of it and taking the gun back. This firearm, I actually don't think in this photo that the firearm is pointed at the child. I think the firearm is, based on the angle of the camera, probably more pointed at this person right here. But she's there. We hear her, we see her. She does nothing. Absolutely nothing. This is some of the first evidence that we see where if something doesn't stop, if something doesn't change, she is moving in the direction of potentially a fatal incident, and that is exactly what happened. And I want you to recall Ms. Gutierrez's interview on November 9th when Ms. Gutierrez spoke of the accidental discharge with the other stuntman. Having a complete lack of understanding of her role in safety on this movie set. She's talking about Sarah Zachary, and she was like, well, yours just went off in there after you loaded it. And I said, yeah, well, I can't be responsible for every dickhead fucking stunt guy that gets a hold of the gun and doesn't understand the concept that it's hot. Her entire job is to be responsible for exactly that.
And you can see the defense just going, ouch, ouch. It's very powerful when you use the words of the defendant against them. So we're not going to really hear about the witnesses. She knows the weaknesses. The weaknesses are the witnesses. She's going to just rely on Hannah's statement, the video evidence, much more concrete. And the only time she did is when she had to rely on the caterer, because that's the only thing that they're basing that. And of course, Hannah's text messages, getting rid of evidence charge. But I want my stuff back. And like I've been talking about with the Adelson case, people have gotten very lax with their text messages as far as putting incriminating things over text message. We like to think it's much more intimate than it is. And so lucky for her, she just used the word stuff and not something more descriptive. But for Sarah, to answer the question that I was asked in the beginning with the comments, for Sarah Zachary to say that she didn't know why she got rid of the bullets, she did it in a panic. She did it to cover her, but let's be honest here. We all know she knew it was important evidence. And for Kari Morrissey to try to tell the jury that Sarah Zachary, the prop mistress, who threw away the bullets, didn't know the import of the bullets. Forget it, on the cart. It is about as ridiculous as the defense arguing that stuff in that baggie was protein powder. But unfortunately, when the defense made some real big stumbles, they should have, the expert witness should have practiced top gun safety, even if the gun was fake. Should have practiced it beforehand. They should have gone over his testimony. If they didn't, I'm sure they did, really choreographed it, how he was going to handle even if they really were. I've heard they were replicas, but I've also heard that it was a replica, meaning a firearm that looked old but could actually work, or a toy gun, or basically like a tissue box, something that couldn't be fired. Doesn't matter. It looks bad. And for the judge to admonish, like I said, I thought it was a bad moment.
And when she took this job, she agreed to that responsibility. There is no exception in the law for you're young. The exception in the law does not exist. The law treats everyone.
Go back to my episodes. They are changing laws all over America to argue that people up to, I believe in Chicago, it's up to 23, maybe even older. They're saying their brains aren't developed. It does come into play with sentencing, certainly. And now they are giving people who take people's lives, killers, teen killers, parole, early parole, access to parole after 10 years, 15 years. So this is a little bit untrue. Yeah, it is a factor, your age. But as far as guilt or innocence, no. If that's the argument being made, it's more an argument that comes into sentencing. But our courts are people who have been given life, they're ending life without parole and really giving teen killers access to parole very, very early. So
The same, and it must. What was the point to the testimony about the lever action rifle? Well, here's the point to the testimony about the lever action rifle. More negligence, more carelessness, more lack of attention to safety. She loaded a lever action rifle with dummy rounds that, by the way, according to the director, was completely unnecessary. Because yes, while it's true, this gun operates in a way where if a certain type of camera angle is hitting it, dummy rounds would be appropriate if the scene calls for loading or cycling. There wasn't a scene that called for that. So she just loaded a lever action rifle with dummy rounds and surprisingly put the wrong caliber round in the gun. That is absolutely an example of someone who is not paying attention, not taking their job seriously. I want to talk to you.
So how did this happen? Did she just get the way I see it is that her dad always told her everything she did was great. These kids with much older parents become the apple of their eye, almost get spoiled like grandchildren. Is that what happened here? But who wants to stand up to Alec Baldwin? Who would want to stand up to any of the people on that set? It just reminded, I mean, just the phrase, the stench of failure, just wait, like, just came off of came off that set from the testimony that I heard. People on the way down or desperate to climb up, all desperate for Alec Baldwin's approval, being led around by a madman. So Prosecutor Morrissey was really smart here to make the point, and I believe it's coming up, that the production was unsafe. No question about it. She basically did two things in this, or three things. One, she got rid of all the bad witnesses by really not addressing them, not reminding the jury of them. Two, she also anticipated the defense's closing so that they didn't have much to work with, that she knew that they were going to hammer home on that OSHA report that, by the way, if I'm understanding correctly, that Alec Baldwin and team are fighting that fine, that I think it's a $150,000 fine, the highest that you can get. And three, by relying on evidence that you can't argue with. You can't argue with the defendant's own words. You can't, and now the convicted's own words, but at this time, the defendant's word, you can't go wrong there. You can't go wrong with the video evidence. Great close.
A little bit about some of the rounds that you've seen, because it's critical to tracking the existence of the live rounds on this movie set. And we have spent a lot of time and effort tracking those rounds around that movie set. And we're going to show you that evidence right now. So the important thing to know is that the Seth Kenney dummies, which you are looking at right here, are patinaed. They are distinct. They have an antique.
So Diane Avery, while they're talking about the bullets, asked, do you think the guilty verdict helps Alec's case? Thank you, Diane, because that's a good point that I wanted to make. Thank you for reminding me of it, because they'll say the guilty one is in jail. No. I think it would be very good for Alec Baldwin if she got acquitted, frankly, because this gives the state more confidence with their case. The verdict came back very quickly, and it will give them more confidence going into their case. I think it would be very hard getting a hung jury or an acquittal to say, oh yeah, we're going to try Alec Baldwin with the same charges. I think they could be really, remember, he's coming in, he's selling his $17 million mansion. And if you listen to the show last night, he admits in there that he has to do interviews because this is affecting his work. People don't want to cast him in movie roles. At first he says, which is funny because he contradicts himself. On the first call, he says he's going to retire, doesn't want to be in movies anymore. And then in the second call, he says, I have to give an interview to George Stephanopoulos. And I think those are going to be really damning. I think a jury is going to hate him. Between him huffing and puffing up the hill with that gun, barking orders, firing off rounds that weren't in the script. I'd love to hear him. He might be so arrogant, like Charlie Adelson, that'll take the stand. And he's a good actor, but he is not he doesn't have that extra thing to really act his way through. I mean, how do you act your way out of, I have no guilt? It's someone else's fault. And that ridiculous story about that he told investigators and he told George Stephanopoulos that Hannah was in the process of guiding him through the motions that ended her life. It basically, I mean, sorry, not Hannah. Sorry, Helena Hutchins. My apologies. You have two H names and it can become kind of confusing here. I mean, I don't think a jury's going to look on that kindly.
Coloring. They also have silver primers. These rounds did not come on that movie set until October 12th of 2021 because Mr. Kinney didn't have them, and if you recall his testimony, he was in Texas. So he had to get back, clean them up, and provide them to Sarah Zachary, and that took place on October 12th. This is just simply the primer side of those rounds. You can see that they're dark in color on the primer side, and they do appear to have silver primers. This is a photograph of the 3840 dummies. If you recall Mr. Kinney's testimony, the 3840 dummies came from Billy Ray. And the important thing about this photograph is that none of those dummy rounds had silver primers.
So she's not going to call back too much of his testimony. She's going to be like, just look at the pictures. They prove what I'm saying. Don't remember too much of Seth Kinney's testimony. But I'd be very surprised if they don't appeal on the judge prejudicing the jury with that arms expert yesterday who the judge admonished for pointing the gun at the judge. He said he didn't, which is exactly what Alec Baldwin did. It was like we were rewatching it in real time, a very situation very similar to Alec Baldwin. If something had been in there that he didn't know or didn't anticipate, it could have been very bad. I heard people were ducking in the courtroom. But if you do that in the, if the judge is doing that in the presence of the jury, they can get the idea that they determine whether they will listen to the defense, the expert witnesses.
And silver primer is a very important piece of this puzzle. This is those same rounds on their side. You can see that they are shiny brass. We also know that they have brass primers. We just saw that. Based on Mr. Kinney's testimony, you know that they were 3840, but there was also some 4440 caliber rounds in that box. Does that monitor not working? Well, let's stop.
It is now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's take a moment to talk about all this testimony that you've heard about whether or not the live rounds found at PDQ, which are photographed there on the left, match the live rounds found on the set of Rust. You don't have to be a gun expert to look at those and see they simply do not match. Even though you could look at those rounds and fundamentally understand that they are not the same, the the sheriff's department sent them to the FBI for testing so that we could actually have some experts confirm what we can see with our very own eyes. And what you have in evidence, if you want to see them in real time, you have State's Exhibit 79, you have State's Exhibit 91. State's Exhibit 79 is a disassembled live round from PDQ Props. State's Exhibit 79 is a disassembled live round from the set of Rust. You can look at them, you can see the projectiles are different, you can see that perhaps the primers are even different. If you recall, Ms. Popple indicated there were only 10 silver.
Right. So what she's saying is this is a no-brainer. You can see the difference with your eye, but she'll also make the point that she didn't shake the rounds ever.
Primered live rounds found at PDQ. The rest of them were brass. The other thing that you can just see with your eyes is the gunpowder in these is substantially different. It has a different chemical composition. So any argument that could ever be made in this case that Seth Kinney was the source of these live rounds is absolutely dishonest.
Okay, do I have this wrong? Isn't the counter argument to that the bullets coming from Helena, coming from Hannah when she said, I brought them to the investigators from my home, which means I got them from my dad, who got them from Seth Kinney. Isn't that the counter argument to that? Can you let me know? All right, we'll continue.
Now, I'm going to ask you to take a walk in the weeds with me here, okay? This is a photograph of October 10th of 2021. You can see the color of the rounds at the top. Those are brass primered rounds. The rounds in the bottom appear to be lighter, and I would suggest to you, based on the totality of the evidence that we're going to go through, that you are looking at live rounds. And keep in mind, anything that you see on the set of this movie that is a revolver ammunition, prior to October 12th, if it has a silver primer, it's a live round. Because the silver primered dummies didn't come on set for 2 days after this photograph was taken. Here's our comparison photo that Mr. Primo put together for us. And if you need it when you're reviewing the evidence and doing your deliberations or engaging in your deliberations, I have included it for you. But we're going to do a comparison here in a moment. Now, the importance of this photograph, still October 10th of 2021. There appears to be revolver ammunition in the background there at the top. 2 of those have silver primers. The problem with that is the silver primer dummies weren't there yet. But the live rounds were. And there's your close-up. It's absolutely undeniable. Is it blurry? Yes. Can you clearly see the difference? Absolutely. All of these photos that you're looking at were October 10th. Now, let's move to October 13th.
Right. Right. I mean, just the fact that the murder by Meister is bringing up in the chat is a good point, which is that all this searching was done 40 days afterwards. And it does take time to get a warrant. Sometimes you can get it. Sometimes they can turn it around very quickly. But I was surprised that there weren't more holdouts. I mean, I thought it was going to go this way, but I was surprised there weren't more holdouts saying, I thought so. I was saying that this is not the way we do investigations. More of a kind of a protest vote, protest, not a protest holdout, because I really did feel by the end of this closing argument, it was a banger of a closing argument. That it was curtains for Hannah on this charge. I thought the second charge was going to be not guilty. That's the way I saw it was going to go. But I was surprised that they were as fast as they were. I was surprised more people were concerned about this investigation being so late, having the suspect really be a shortcut for the detective. So instead of being a witness, he was more like, what do you call it? More like a guide, guiding around the really crime scene. So
Of 2021. I invite you to look at that photograph carefully and ask yourselves, which of these is not like the others? It's the third one from the left.
thanks so much, Shari Davis. Okay, it's dark outside, but I'm gonna go work the garden, get dirty. Oh, you lucky dog, Shari, to have a garden. Be one with Mother Nature. That's a good thing to do. And thank you so much. Yeah, this is not, there's no joy in this verdict. Oh, a woman's gone. And this case reminded me, as I've said before, a lot of the Conrad Murray case, which I watched. I was glued to the screen with that one. And just these kind of trials don't make you this one didn't make me particularly proud.
Look at the shape of that projectile and look at the color of the brass. So on October 13th, Mr. Kenny's dummies have arrived on set. They are the only dummy rounds with silver primers, but they are patinaed in color. So when you look at this round, it appears to be a spot-on match for the live rounds, but unfortunately we can't see the primer in this photo, so we can't tell if this is a brass primered dummy. That's the reason that we watched thousands of videos and looked at thousands of pictures, because then we moved to the production outfitter videos from October 13th, the same day. And we're looking at that same gun holster that was provided to Mr. Baldwin. And there you see it. The third one down has a silver primer. And now you know.
Dr. Zapp saying, I'm staying inside, so I'm giving $1 more than Shari. Dr. Zapp, thank you so much. Are you staying inside? Are you staying inside and watching this? Are you tuning out too? Is everyone bored out of their minds? Let me know. You can move on to something else.
It is a live round. You know that because it's not a Seth Kinney dummy. If it were,
I'm going to move forward from this. Okay, let's get out of this endless bullet stuff. It's okay, here we go.
we're talking about boxes. Obviously, when she says things, she's talking about boxes. They usually had JS on them. This is one my dad sent me, and mine are usually beat up pretty bad, like they're very dirty and gross. She's talking about the box and the styrofoam insert. The box and the styrofoam insert, she's saying, are dirty. Hers, the ones that she brings on set, are dirty. They're not new and clean like some of the other ones. Detective Hancock asks her, this is the one that was or handed that you guys had said that you had pulled from. This is that moment in that interview where Ms. Gutierrez has already shown Hancock the photo from her dad, and an hour or two later, Detective Hancock decides that now is the time to show her the photo of the box of dummies she was pulling from that day, and it won't surprise you to learn they're a spot-on match. You have the styrofoam insert from that box of dummies here in evidence, and the reason that we gave it to you so that you can actually look at it in real time and not.
I mean, can you tell me the point of why Sarah Zachary was given immunity and why it was such a crucial thing to the crime scene? And the stuff back in Hannah's hotel room is the, I'm trying to say, the source, the center, what is it? Help me talk, guys. I'm losing my words here. Of the charges, those charges that set the getting rid of evidence charge. No one saw her do it. And I feel like that was just out there to smear her, put in to smear her. And with some real weak sauce. And that's what I say. It just makes me disappointed that they went with that, and just the way that this was done.
Look at a photograph is because it's kind of dirty and gross. It kind of fits exactly the way that she described it. But there are some characteristics of this styrofoam insert that are going to become more important.
Oh, can we get off of this stuff? Can we get to where it gets more interesting besides all this technical? I know it's very technical, but I only have so much time, guys, tonight.
Armors don't leave the gun. Now, let's move over to our tampering with evidence charge. How is getting rid of a bag of cocaine tampering with evidence related to involuntary manslaughter? Well,
Oh, did I just have my sound down? Let me just... Okay. Thanks for the laughs and support. I'm just staying. People not doing the right thing and getting too personal, but anything to support Roberta's channel. Shari Davis. Not gardening. Turning around in a gardening sacrifice we're seeing here. Thank you. Yeah, I don't know.
On October 21st, 2021, the incident occurs. Ms. Gutierrez understands that someone has been seriously injured. She does not yet know that that person is not going to live or has already died. She gets interviewed at the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office. I will say, surprisingly, 2 occasions after this incident where a helicopter had to come in, ambulances had to come in. Ms. Gutierrez, on 2 occasions after that incident.
So I'm going to ask a question I've been asking myself. Would we feel anything if Hannah Gutierrez Reed were a man? If she were a young man in this position? Would we be more angry? Are we more protective of her because she's a young woman? Would she have been, seems like there's ganged up on a little bit on the set, the tensions on the set. Would they be the same if she had been a man falling short? Or did it work to her advantage? Do people think that she got a break because she was a woman? And I'm not talking about the nepotism here. Clearly, Hollywood is very impressed, and Alec Baldwin was. She went around saying that she was a daughter of a world-famous armorer, and she had it all under control. Anyone remember that from the? And thank you, Dr. Zapp says, one more for gardening indoors. We're doing like an Oklahoma pie auction competition here. That's what it feels like. But would we feel differently if Hannah were a man? Would I feel differently? Is there some vulnerability to her being a young woman, being on a set with a A-list star running the show who has a reputation for being a maniac, a hothead, getting into altercations with the paparazzi? Something to think about. Let me know. Or do you think it's working to her advantage? She actually has an advantage because she's a woman, that she has the sympathy factor, that people withhold judgment.
Spoke about her concerns about her career. Wow. That gives you an idea that you are dealing with someone who is not particularly concerned about the health and safety of others. And her job was to be concerned about the health and safety of others. But on that day, she's just thinking about herself. She's put a lady in the hospital, a man in the hospital. She asks to be escorted to the bathroom. Corporal Hancock agrees to do that. And we have her on video on the way there expressing dismay about how this will affect her career. Ouch. After the interview, Hannah goes back to her hotel.
If Alec Baldwin's phone calls are not included in his trial about him saying that he wasn't on the Saturday Night Live special, sorry, I had to cough, I will be so disappointed. And I would assume that we're going to see the same prosecutor in that trial. I find her insufferable and mannered and acty, but boy, can she do a good closing argument. And this was excellent.
Rebecca Smith goes to Hannah's room. She's been summoned by some other folks to try to sort of sit and visit and give Hannah some support. So Rebecca Smith goes to her room.
So would you guys rather watch the clip of the witness with the gun? Is that more interesting to you? Because I can move to that. I pulled that clip to watch too. So you get an idea of how she, I mean, I really just wanted to show you some of this, not all of it. It does give you an idea of how she structured her closing argument, which was not, you heard this witness, you heard that witness, and she didn't use the witnesses to make her case. So very effective, very smart. She knew that was, okay, thank you. She knew that that was a weak point in her case. But she says things like COVID restrictions weren't an issue. When, if you go back to Dave Hall's testimony, he said we didn't have Hannah in the church because of the pandemic. We didn't want too many people in the church. And Alec Baldwin last night, you know, I held back. I thought it, but I didn't say it. He says, well, Hannah couldn't fit into the church. And I thought, is that a dig on her size? Like, she's a 5'3", 5'4". I don't know how much she weighs, but she wasn't as thin as she was at the trial, certainly. Not his ideal. We know he married Kim Bassinger. He married Hillary Thomas from Boston. We know his type. He seems to not like women. Was that just sort of a slip? And then he says, oh, well, the church wasn't one of those things. There was room, but it's just an odd little moment in that phone call. Pretty interesting. All right. Let's see. Here. Okay, here we go.
So, Your Honor, I'm going to object.
All right, first of all, everybody's nervous because you have not demonstrated to us that they are unloaded.
So no sending. I'm going to make. I will hammer home this point for those in the back again. We saw in. Oh, what is his name in? Oh, the murder trial that was such a big political kind of trial. The protesters, self-defense trial. That trial, where the prosecutor went over the line and the judge immediately sent out the jury. Put it in the chat if you know what I'm talking about. Here, there's no break. Rittenhouse. Thank you. Kyle Rittenhouse trial. No break here, no sending out the jury. To do this in front of the jury, I find very prejudicial. Let me know what you think. Like I've said.
So before you start showing us the weapons, make sure they're unloaded, including that one that you just touched.
So for those who are wondering, what I hear is that they do have, so every trial I've ever been to, we've had screeners. So it's like going to an airport. I have to take off my shoes. I usually have to be totally wanded. And in Keith Raniere, the Nexium trial, we had 2 of them. So we had one the general one in the Brooklyn courthouse that we had to go through, and then another airport X-ray type screening station right in front of the door to the courtroom. And the guy in front of me, this Japanese guy, got reprimanded, and he got his tape. He tried to sneak in a tape recorder in front of me. So only time that happened. But so we know he's been through that kind of screener. But still, it's the way it looks. It doesn't really matter whether it is a gun made out of soap or a gun made out of stone or whatever. It's the way it looks. And for the subject matter of the trial, this was a giant fail. It made the defense and the defense witness look very bad, but the judge certainly didn't help by reprimanding him in front of the entire jury.
Mr. Kuski, do you agree with me that basic gun safety requires that the handler of the gun not point the gun at anyone?
If it's a real gun, yes.
So are we going to see this guy back for Alec Baldwin as a defense witness for Alec Baldwin? And he'll be repeating Alec Baldwin's statement. And you can go back to the thumbnail of one of my older Alec Baldwin episodes. You never point a gun at anyone unless you're told it's unloaded. That's his own safety thing. He's almost making that argument here. just admit it was an error and move on.
Do you agree with me that while you were sitting here in the courtroom, you pulled out a gun and you pointed it at the judge?
I do not.
You disagree?
I pointed the gun into this space up here, never directly at the judge.
Do you agree that basic gun safety requires that you keep the muzzle of the gun pointed down for safety?
Not at all. A gun may be pointed, as any hunter education class like I taught, may be pointed up, may be pointed back, may be pointed cross arms, as in the military, may be pointed at the ground, may be put in something like a military stance, such as order arms with the butt on the ground and the piece right under your arm. So, no. And to further, in a cross draw or any of the...
No, I'm not talking about a cross draw, thank you. Do you agree that when you pulled that firearm out and pointed it in the direction of the judge, the deputy standing next to you had to intervene and grab the gun and point it down?
I'm going to object.
Yeah, between this and the way the Victoria Martins case resolved, terrible. Someday maybe I'll cool down enough to talk about that case. It makes me not want to ever set foot in New Mexico. And thank you, Karen Cote. Says, I lived in New Mexico, still a bit of Wild West attitude. The behavior at the movie site is not unusual. Guns everywhere. But I feel that so in addition to the state having a fantastic close, the defense I thought had unfocused and
Mr. Kuski, have you ever been qualified as an expert in firearms safety in a court of law?
No.
Have you ever worked on criminal cases before?
Yes, I have.
Have all of the cases that the criminal cases that you've worked on, has Mr. Bowles been the attorney in all of them?
Not at all.
Not at all?
This was a giant fail for the prosecution. Not giant, small fail for the prosecution here. She take a listen.
No.
Give me a moment, please.
Weird look on the defense attorney's face, like almost a half smile.
Let me clarify my question.
She's not clarifying.
Have you
She's asking a different question.
worked on criminal cases related to the securities industry?
Yes, I have.
Okay, so I think that's enough from that. The defense case was a absolute mess. I think it's pretty much irrelevant right now, or that's how I'm feeling. I guess and it's sad to see a mother upset, but I do think that Hannah Gutierrez will do well. Like I said before, I think she needs to, I think this is, I don't know her. It's presumptuous of me, but I will make this presumption. My sense is that she needs to grow up a bit. And unfortunately, sometimes we grow from the painful things in life. And she seems very pampered and very spoiled. And as some other people would have quit, or maybe she was so desperate to make it, she hung on, but not to do her job in that manner. Disappointing. But I wanted to just show you one last thing before I go. So I mentioned yesterday that Alec Baldwin's father was a taught riflery. He was an expert marksman in riflery. He was honorably discharged from the U.S. Marine Corps. But near the bottom of the article goes into Alec Baldwin's tweet. So it says in 2018, Alec Baldwin, is this ironic or what? Joined the No Rifle Association, a celebrity coalition with the goal of exposing the alleged hold of the NRA on the U.S. government, according to Fox News. He had previously tweeted at former NRA spokesperson Dana Loesch, saying, I see that D. Loesch, meaning Dana Loesch, wants to, quote, take back the truth. Hold on. Take back the truth. So I see that Dana Loesch wants to take back the truth, and she doesn't care how many dead bodies she has to step over in that pursuit. The Second Amendment is not a moral credit card that buys you all the guns you want. The law needs to be rethought. And so here's the actual picture of that tweet. And following the news of the fatal accident on set, Dana Loesch writes, after all this crazy, I'll say crap, not her word, Alec Baldwin has said to and about me, I'm going to have more grace than him right now, and leave it at that. And legal scholar Jonathan Turley told Just the News regarding Baldwin's possible familiarity with the fundamentals of firearm safety that it could be relevant. It's very relevant to his potential civil or criminal liability. And go back to my episode with his police interview. And he is very familiar with all the different types of possible ammunition, but it is not determinative. The underlying question is likely Baldwin's culpability, not as an actor, but as a producer, Turley wrote in an email. A reasonable actor would likely take the word of an assistant director that he was given a cold gun, particularly if the armor is present. Well, we know she wasn't. The key issue for both criminal and civil liability is the degree to which the producers maintain a site without due caution and circumspection. The set for Rust appears to have dispensed with basic safety precautions and protocols. It seemed like an accident waiting to happen. According to court records, the film assistant director, Dave Halls, grabbed the period gun and told Baldwin it was a cold gun. But that's not the story the jury heard in this trial, even though the defendant herself supports that story. And Alec Baldwin, same story he told, she went with Dave Hall's story. So that is what I have for today. Thanks for watching The Verdict with me. July 9th is when Alec Baldwin's trial starts. I believe what also starts this week is the Crumbly Dad's trial. I'll be watching that. I'm off tomorrow, but I'll be back here at 6 p.m. Eastern, Saturday night. Thanks for listening, everybody. Have a great night.